All right, hello. Thank you very much for coming to my talk. My name is Jen. I'm from the Future Interaction Technology Lab in Swansea University in the UK. And my talk today is about using smartwatches as public displays. So as we've seen in this session already, smartwatches really are becoming quite common. And so far, research in this area has focused predominantly around the wearer. But a person's watch can also be seen by those other than the wearer, people around you. Think, for example, about times when you've glanced at another person's watch when there's no clock nearby, or cases where you don't want to be considered rude for so obviously looking at your own watch. What if you could get more information than just the time? For example, I could show simple things like public information or the wearer's Twitter stream, or more interestingly, I could glance at your watch to see my content, some sort of notification that would prompt me to interact with the person wearing it. This is the basis of our work and what I'm going to be talking to you about today. So the idea of using wearables as public displays is not entirely new. So previous work in this area includes things like the bubble badge, which was a brooch that is used as a public display for those around the wearer. Team Aware, which is a shirt that enhances the awareness of team sports, showing wearers information such as fouls and number of goals, things like that. Social Fabric Fitness is an e-textile screen on the back of runners' T-shirts to display information to fellow runners. And then more recently, last year, was the Lunar Helm, which is an LED-equipped bike helmet that's supposed to give bystanders a little bit of information about the sensor data from the wearer, bicyclist. These examples, though, are designed specifically for those around the wearer and are quite specialist equipment. Our approach appropriates current wearable technology, watches, and gives value to both the wearer and those around the wearer. So a quick overview. This paper does have a lot of information in it, 4 studies, in fact, and a design space for public smartwatch interaction. But our goal really was here to open up the area of using personal wearables for public displays for others to build on. So I am going to try and skip through quite a lot of the stuff that we've done quite quickly, starting with social implications of actually looking at somebody else's watch. So, for instance, it can be considered quite rude to look at your own watch during conversation, perhaps because it might imply, oh, I'm bored, I'd like to leave. But is it then more socially acceptable to look at somebody else's watch? And also, how often do people notice either of these actions? So we did a study to find this out, and our main focus of this was the perceived social acceptability of looking at other people's watches, whether looking at another person's watch during conversation interrupted the flow of that conversation, and if it's even possible to look subtly so that the wearer doesn't notice. So essentially we did a between-group study with this. Our primary group was looking at the effect of public wearables, and we also did a comparison group as well, looking at the effect of personal wearables, i.e. Looking at your own watch. So we recruited 18 participants for the primary group, 1 glancer and 1 wearer. The wearer being the person who is wearing the watch and displaying the information, and the glancer being the person who may look at that information. So for the purpose of this study, the participants did not know each other. They were briefed separately, given a watch each, and asked to sit opposite one another with their hands on the table in this way here. We gave them several topics of conversation to chat about over a period of about 5 minutes. And the glancer was prompted via watch vibrations to look at the other person's watch several times without their knowledge. The wearer did not know the true purpose of the study. Okay, we had 2 researchers sitting in opposite corners as well to get observations. The comparison group, we recruited 16 additional participants, again in pairs, with the same conversation set up. This time only one of the participants wore a watch, and when they felt their vibration, they looked at their own watch. The participant who was not wearing a watch was not informed of the true nature of the study. We just wanted to get an idea of if it's noticeable to look at your own watch. So after both of these sets of studies, we followed this with a semi-structured interview. We began by informing the wearer, obviously, the real purpose of the investigation, which is to see if they noticed the other person looking at a watch. We then asked them about the flow of conversation. We asked the wearer directly if they had noticed the glancer looking at their watch. And then we asked both participants to rate their social acceptability of looking, first of all, at another person's watch, and secondly, at their own watch during a one-to-one conversation. So first of all, the noticeability. During the study, the primary group that was looking at somebody else's watch Only 33% noticed the glancer looking at the watch they themselves were wearing, compared with the comparison group where 88% of participants noticed the other person looking at their own watch during the conversation. Fisher's exact test on this shows a significant result, indicating that it is less noticeable to look at another person's watch rather than your own. This also seems to be mimicked in real life. We asked them in a post-study questionnaire how often you've noticed people looking at your watch. 71% of participants said that they had looked at somebody else's watch, but only 13% said that they had noticed somebody else looking at their watch. So that's useful. Now for the social acceptability. We asked our participants on a 5-point Likert scale, where 1 is completely unacceptable and 5 is completely acceptable. What's the social acceptability of looking at somebody else's watch and looking at your own watch? Obviously, the results here are quite similar, and they're not statistically significant. But in general, it's no more noticeable, unacceptable, or unusual to look at another person's watch rather than your own. Okay, so now that we've kind of ascertained that, we moved on to feasibility. How feasible would it be to actually view something on somebody else's watch? That is, how often is a watch face visible to other people standing around them? So we conducted a second study, this time a watch face deportment study, where we did a diary study of 7 weeks in 4 countries. We're 3 researchers. We had a smartphone app to log watch visibility and deportment. People who were not wearing a watch at this time were not logged. So we categorized them by 8 arm positions, 3 basic visibility classifications from the perspective of somebody sitting quite close to the watch wearer. So the arm positions were sort of arm down by the side, on a table, on your lap, by your head, folded arms and arm gesturing, and your hand in pocket, and then just a miscellaneous other. And the visibilities were, as we can see here, full visibility where you can see the entire screen in full view, partial visibility maybe where it's a little bit sort of slanted, you can see it but it's a bit of an angle, and then not visible at all. And if the sleeves were covering it or whatnot, and we couldn't see that they were wearing a watch, we didn't log them. So the results of this, we observed 300 watch faces during the study. It's worth noting that none of these were smartwatches. We did this over the summer last year. We didn't see a single smartwatch. Hopefully that's going to change. But 88% of the watches that we observed were either fully visible or partially visible, and there were no noticeable differences in positions or visibilities between times of day, locations, cultures, or countries. We also noticed that position and angle and orientation of display are factors in the choice of information type. Position helps when choosing between showing information aimed at glancers or aimed at the wearers themselves. For obviously, when a watch is facing the wearer, it might be more appropriate to show the time. Or when the wearer's arm is on the table, their hands folded or something, it might be more appropriate to show glancer content. So we use these results to formulate a design space for public watch displays. We generated an extensive set of sample design concepts covering all of the visibilities and deportments we identified. These were then analyzed to extract technical abstractions and systematize the properties and feature designs in this space. So these are the interaction dimensions that we envisage will shape the future of public smartwatch displays. They focus around the content being displayed and can be categorized on a scale across a dimension of its source, relevance, persistence, representation, and granularity. Okay, so I will just go through these quite quickly. First of all, the content source. Who owns the content being displayed? This could be the wearer, for example, my holiday snaps, my health information, my next meeting time, my contact information, things like that. The glancer, in this case the glancer being the person that might be looking at my watch, could provide information such as their missed call, their alerts, things like that. Or it could be sourced from the public domain, things like weather forecasts or news headlines or adverts. Okay, so now we turn to content relevance. Who is the content relevant to? Okay, so again, we have the same 3. It could be relevant to the wearer, information about their own schedule or their contact details, information that's relevant to the glancer, their missed calls, their conversation cues, things like that. I mean, you can easily pair my watch with somebody else's phone. Or it could be relevant to anybody, the public, or the general public, things like the current time. Like we've all looked at somebody else's watch, breaking news or stock prices, things like that. Note that all of these are a scale, not a choice of 3. So you could have content relevant to both the wearer and the glancer. For instance, say a shared schedule. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Okay, so another sort of factor here is how long is the information going to be displayed. So it could be quite a long, maybe the entire duration of the encounter. Perhaps if you want to show the schedule information, this isn't working at the moment, but it could be showing how long I've got left in my talk so that you know how long I've got left. A medium sort of sub-period of an encounter, maybe a weather warning that you need to see for a brief time just to have a quick look and then it'll disappear. Or maybe a quick burst of information such as standard phone alerts or an advert. Then we have representation. How will the data be presented? It could be in an abstract way with color-based cues, for example, red for being late or green for a new email. Sort of intermediate level of detail, such as images, so an envelope, for instance, to indicate a new message. Or it could be more explicit, clearly understandable, to the point with like text, let's say a news headline, a full news headline. Okay? And finally, we have granularity. What is the level of detail of this information? It could be quite coarse, perhaps an imprecise display with simple cues only. So in this example here, we've got missed calls. Coarse example would be just, you have missed calls. That's it. An intermediate may be some but not all information. In this example here, you've had 2 missed calls. It doesn't actually tell you who they're from or when they were given. And then, of course, you could have a very fine level of granularity, which will give you all of the information. And in this case, call 1's from Dad at this time, call 2 is from Ben at this time. So a way of demonstrating its usefulness in generating services is to make unusual or uncommon combinations in this design space. So here's 2 examples of quite uncommon scenarios in our design space. So the first one here, A, is an abstract representation with a fine level of detail, showing the weather throughout the day. You can see it goes from being quite bright to being quite grey. B over here is content sourced from the wearer that's relevant to the general public. So in this case, the wearer's emergency health information. This could be used in conjunction with, say, a heart monitor to display only when an irregular heartbeat is detected, for instance. There's more detail on usage of this in the paper. Our third study got people to use these aspects and explored which are the most valuable given their expectations of current technology and familiarity with the ways watches are currently used. But I'm not going to go through that because I just don't have time. Instead, I'm going to move on to the last study that we did, design probes. So to test naturalistic usage, we conducted 3 technology probes using an Android application for a Sony Smartwatch 2. We chose the content source as our primary consideration and designed 3 different applications. So the first one of this focused on the wearer's content, and in this case we used a display that shows the time remaining until the wearer's next meeting. So here's my watch popped up now. I now have 4 minutes left. Although I think that's a little bit wrong. I actually maybe have 3 minutes left. But the idea being it gives the glancer an idea of the amount of time remaining in the wearer's schedule. And it's worth noting here as well that this is now upside down for me, but it's the right way around for anybody that's looking at it. So the second probe we had was the glancer's content. In this case, we chose any missed calls, emails, or SMS messages, which are sourced from the glancer's phone via Bluetooth. And this use case is to help the glancer evaluate whether to take out their phone to respond to alerts, right? So if I was to sit opposite somebody, I could see that I had a message, but I could see it was, from somebody that can wait, then maybe I wouldn't, interrupt the conversation by getting my phone out. And the last one was public content, sourced from public sources, things like adverts, weather, news bulletins, and the use case here is a traditional kind of public display showing information potentially relevant to anyone passing the screen. So we did a study on this. We recruited 4 participants to use one of these probes between 8 and 12 days, 1 participant for probe 1 and 3, and 2 for probe 2. So the first probe, which was the wearer's content, we picked a 46-year-old male who regularly attends scheduled informal and formal meetings. Probe 2 was a married couple who work and live together, and each person's phone was connected to the other's watch via Bluetooth. And probe 3, the public content, was a 29-year-old male who regularly engages in sort of social and professional meetings. So the results of probe 1 then, the wearer's content, the participants saw a clear correlation between observed glances and the information being displayed. And he estimated that the people he noticed glancing at the watch, around half commented on the display, saying something like, there's something on your watch, or you're late. And he also noted that the people pointing out, oh, you're late, is actually quite useful to bring meetings to a close, because they do it for you, instead of saying, oops, sorry, I've got to go. Probe 2, which was the married couple. The husband here noticed a change in his behavior. Apparently he normally lets his phone go into voicemail, but now he knows his wife can see everything that he's doing. He feels like he needs to answer it, so that was his change. And the wife, first of all, noticed that she was being quite nosy, asking, who's that phone call from, who's that phone call from? But the thing that they liked about it the most was that the feeling that they knew they were close to each other. Every time they moved apart and the Bluetooth connection between one's phone and one's watch was lost, it would buzz. And they said it felt like they was having like a sort of elastic between them. And it was very useful for the supermarket, she said, so that if he wandered off too far, she would know to go and find him. Finally, we have probe 3. The public content. The participant here noticed that people are far more likely to comment on his watch in social situations as opposed to work settings, and noted that it often initiated conversations about the content on the watch. So, in summary, the prevalence of smartwatches is increasing, as we've seen from this session. Therefore, it is timely to investigate their extended use beyond the inevitable phone on your wrist scenario. We sketched out a comprehensive design space and conducted 4 key studies to explore the concept of personal watches as public displays. Our results show that looking at somebody else's watch is significantly less noticeable than looking at your own, and that social acceptability is not a problem. And our watch deportation study show faces are visible the majority of the time. Glancing at somebody else's watch is already common practice. We show the value of using them on public displays, and we hope this work has opened up the space of using wearables as public displays for others to build upon in future work. Thank you.
I've got one to start us off, which is I'm curious if you've thought about the mechanics and security issues around connecting my phone to a stranger's watch or vice versa.
Of course we have. It's in the paper, sort of. Yes, we have thought about that, but we didn't focus on it too much. Our real goal in this paper was to sort of open up the space. Obviously, there are privacy issues that would need to be considered, but we touched on them in the paper, but didn't focus on too much. This was just to sort of to get the idea out there, just to see if it is feasible. Good news, it is.
Hi, I'm Celia Zhang from Mobile Life Center and Stockholm University in Sweden. Thank you very much for this very interesting talk, and I really enjoyed it. And so I'm quite interested in the concept of private and public. As you mentioned many times, this like public display and and you also mentioned the public watch and private watch. I just want to know that what do you mean by public and private? Because to me, I think wearable technology, the smartwatches, is different than mobile phone, because mobile phone could be, you can put it in your bag, you can put it in your pocket, you can hide it. But the smartwatch, you're always wearing it. You're always wearing it. It's very publicly visible to the others. So I wonder how you comment on this.
I'm not sure if I completely understand the question, but yes, you're right. Obviously, the first thing we realize at this is that a watch is pretty much always on display, right?
Yeah.
Whereas a phone, if I wanted to not be quite sneaky about it, I could put it in my pocket. I suppose if I wanted to hide this, I can pull my sleeve down. That might work, but I don't think I really understand the question. Sorry.
I mean, how do you...
Let's give other people a chance. Maybe you can talk to her after the session.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Azim from Korea Institute of Science and Technology. I was just thinking about how do you think about the practical applicability of your concept? Because the greatest problem smartwatch manufacturers are facing today is the battery life, and they try to keep it in the lowest power mode when you are not looking at it. So how do you...
Yeah, that's right. We did mention this in the paper as well. I mean, obviously now I've got this on. It is still on, but you're right. It's in a low power mode. I mean, if you look back at the persistence, we're not actually expecting it to be on all the time. It will probably only be on at certain times, specifically maybe when I was having a meeting with somebody and it was getting close to the end of it, maybe just 5 minutes left, and it would kind of flash up. It would be very unlikely for it to stay on all the time. I think we're more anticipating it being on for shorter bursts, particularly if it's something, just like an advert or something would just come up and then it would disappear. So hopefully battery life shouldn't be too much of a problem, but yes, you're right, there is an issue there.
Thanks for it.
Hey, Jeff Nicholas, Google. Really awesome concept. I like this. But I am curious, like, what do you think about your results in the context of smartwatches actually becoming popular? Because it seems like your results are kind of predicated, at least in study one, on the fact that it's totally fine to look at watches now because watches don't show you anything besides time, and that's a total public thing. But once smartwatches are prevalent, they're going to be showing all sorts of private things on them, like, you know, who just sent you an email and stuff. Seems like the results will completely change.
Actually, that's quite a good point. Ooh, we should all do a study on it. You should all do those studies and then cite us.
Well, hi, my name is Deepak Akhil. I'm from University of Tampere, and my question is slightly related to the previous person. It's about glance awareness in smartwatches. When should the watch show the glancer's content and the wearer's content, and how to determine something like that?
Yeah, so are you talking about when it should show something to me and when should it show something? Yeah. We have thought about this as well. So one thing that we sort of came up with originally was using sort of the accelerometer and sort of like, obviously if it's this way facing, then maybe look at it towards me, or maybe just a tap on it for me to get the time. Because obviously if some people, you know, maybe the glancer still want to look at the time and it's busy showing adverts, that wouldn't be any good either, would it? So I guess that's another thing to think about. It is such a huge area, we think, that we have really just tried to just open it up for now, and there's so many different things that could be done, we hope. So yeah, good point.
Can I ask one more, Dan?
I'm going to cut it off here, so everybody can go to lunch.
Yeah,
so,
we're going to lunch, so I can answer the question.
Just a reminder,
It's time for lunch.
it's time for lunch. We'll resume at 2:30, so let's thank the speaker again.